Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you very much for inviting me to participate in the third edition of the General Assembly of the Campus Mondial de la Mer at the kind invitation of Jeremy Bazin. Most unfortunately, the only viable option for me to participate turned to be this video recording. So, but I hope it will be of interest for you. But also, let me wish you a very successful campus. You know, I really wanted to be in Brest, and because Brest and Plazan, this conglomeration play a very important role in marine science, technology, businesses. I personally am in touch and work together with many dear colleagues from the campus. Of course, we work together with Ifremer. I was since 90s participating in the design of the global ocean observations, and I was the one actually who invented that maybe not so nice acronym for this Center for Marine Observation, JCOMOPS. Now it's called OceanOps, much more nicely sounding name, and also many other partners. So let me introduce myself. I am Vladimir Ryabinin, the Executive Secretary of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO. This is in the rank of Assistant Director General of UNESCO. I'm an oceanographer, marine meteorologist, also a marine engineer, and I have been involved in climate science since long. So, you know, I now work for UNESCO, and you all know UNESCO as one of the strongest and most important think tanks of United Nations, intellectual think tank in the world, located in France. Most know UNESCO because of the World Heritage work conserving the World Heritage, including, for example, underwater cultural heritage. But I would like also to say that, of course, UNESCO is the leading world organization when it comes to education, when it comes to social and human sciences, including, for example, the recent decision and the recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence, in the domain of natural sciences, a recent recommendation to all countries to move forward on open science, also on communication, information, in terms of freedom of media, and many other domains. But not many people actually know that UNESCO is also an ocean organization, that it hosts the organization which I now am the chief executive officer, and also which basically is the home of ocean science in the United Nations system, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO. We are a small sector in UNESCO, but really function autonomous. So we are kind of an organization within organization. So IOC is basically the only body of intergovernmental nature in the United Nations system that unites the work of governments and also ocean science. So we were established in the 1960s, actually 1960, and we just turned 61 years old on the 14th of December, and we have 150 member states. These are not member states of UNESCO. We have our own member states, and that means that, you know, this is a very specialized organization. So what we are trying really to develop is a value chain of ocean science. This value chain starts with ocean observations, data management, data handling, operation of national data services, data centers, exchange of data. That data is feeding research. For example, we are leading the research on climate through World Climate Research Program, and actually those climate predictions and projections that people know as IPCC climate predictions are generated actually by the World Climate Research Program that IOC is sponsoring. We are leading the research on carbon, and the future of ocean as carbon sink for humanity is a very big question, because with emissions of carbon, the ability of the ocean to still absorb it from the atmosphere is a big question. So also this absorption of carbon leads to acidity of the ocean. So we run networks focusing on acidity, on what is happening with the ocean oxygen, and you know that 100 or 50% of the oxygen generated in the Earth system comes from marine phytoplankton. So you know, multi-stressors. We were one of the first organizations that started to move forward the research on plastics, on sequestration of carbon, on the blue carbon. So you know, this is the scope of research that we promote in nations. But also on top of that, we provide real oceanographic services. Like for example, we are the international organization responsible for coordination of all tsunami warnings in the world. We provide information, participate in organization of assessment like World Ocean Assessment, IPCC assessments of climate, and many other assessments. And all this contributes to ocean policies, ocean governance. It contributes also to the capacity development, because you know, we need to move forward the science in many nations. Every nation, including landlocked countries, according to Convention of Law of the Sea, should be benefiting from the ocean. But this is only possible if the world knows about the ocean, and this we try to achieve through ocean literacy. So basically, IOC is the organization that coordinates the whole work on ocean research in countries, and really would like to move forward on many issues related to the ocean. But issues are really huge. In 2015, United Nations General Assembly adopted Sustainable Development Goals, including Sustainable Development Goal 14 on the ocean. It was not clear at the time that the whole agenda of United Nations on sustainable development is so much dependent on the health of the ocean. And the health is not in the best of its states. And this is similar to the situation in climate. Like, for example, in 2009, the Conference of Parties of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in Copenhagen had already all the signs, but no decision was taken. So then climate scientists decided to establish a social contract, to work with governments, to inform the governments, to push for the decision. In 2015, we have Paris Agreement. So the situation is to some extent similar in the ocean. We need to make the ocean science heard, also capable of delivering the science we need. But the current situation in the ocean is not like that, because, for example, only 5% of the ocean area is mapped at high resolution. This was the case in 2015. In 5 years, working with Japanese colleagues as coordinators and sponsors, we were able to change this. And then the decade was proclaimed, and we are moving forward now on implementation of that decade. We have been able to start 31 different programs, probably the larger movement than from the whole history of ocean science, starting from the Challenger expedition. We would like to achieve seven qualities of the ocean, like clean, safe, predicted, accessible, inspiring, engaging ocean. You will see these are qualities not only of the ocean water, but also qualities of people and their relations with the ocean. We would like to work in 10 initial challenges, so-called decade challenges, areas of research, focusing on pollution, focusing on health of marine ecosystem, generating food from the ocean, generating ocean economy, addressing the issues related to ocean and climate nexus, understanding risk and warning about risks. This requires observations. This also requires representation of the ocean state in the past, current, and the future digitally through, for example, digital twins of the ocean. We need to make sure that no one is left behind. This requires capacity development. And also we would like to educate the world about the role of the ocean. So basically now with these 31 programs, we are moving ahead very intensively. I would like also to say that some of these programs are not really the programs that are traditional for ocean science, like, for example, deep sea research, mesopelagic studies. This is also, this program includes, for example, such big activities like early career ocean professionals, underwater cultural heritage, empowering women, making them lead the ocean science, educate of ocean empathy, decade of coastal cities and things like this. So, you know, this is not really that only technical science, it involves the whole society. And hopefully with that move, we will be able to also to change the indeed the human relations with the ocean towards much more harmonic situation. 40 times more renewable energy from the ocean. We can generate much more money from the ocean and do this in an equitable way. So it's not only goes to those riches of the world, but also will really help people. This requires certain commitments. And the countries, the 16 countries, basically agreed to commit the governments to make sure that 100% of exclusive economic zones uh, uh, of those countries are governed by plans that are based on science and that ensure sustainability of the ocean under national jurisdiction. So this requires a totally new level of science, and actually the decade of ocean science is now partnering with a high-level panel, and we are going to provide the scientific foundation for managing the ocean sustainably. That is very, very important. So with that, I would like to say that I think we have huge agenda ahead of us. Part of this agenda will be discussed in Brest from the 9th to the 11th of February, and the invitation of President Macron. There will be One Ocean Summit. I have to chair one of the workshops of the 9 workshops in that summit focused on science. And I would like also to basically thank you for listening to me, and I would like to encourage you, if possible, to continue the discussions, the co-designing of requirements in ocean science, because you know you comprise businesses, you comprise scientists, and because of that, it will be possible for you to have, I think, a very important voice in how the requirements for the science that will be implemented during the decade of ocean science can be formulated in a very meaningful way. I'm really impressed by the work that you do, including, for example, Ocean Hackathon, including SeaTech Week. So we actually labeled those projects as contributions to Ocean Decade. So I really hope to see you in Brest in February 2022 and wish you a very successful campus. Thank you so much for listening to me.